Hi, William Ibanez here, creator of Blazing Quantum, and as a patron supporter, I'm helping to bring this episode. Why don't you become a patron supporter as well?
This is the Comics Alternative, episode 164, a look at the December Previews catalog. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Comics Alternative. I'm Derek.
And I'm Andy, and we're two guys with PhDs talking about comics.
And on this episode, Andy and I are going to take a look at the December Previews catalog. But before we get into those solicits, we want to let all of you guys know that this episode of the Comics Alternative is brought to you by the great folks at Discount Comic Book Service. Go to their website, dcbservice.com, for all of your comics pre-ordering needs. There you'll find all DC, Marvel, Image, and Dark Horse titles at 40% off of the cover price if you pre-order. For all of the other publishers, those discounts are going to be 20 to 35% off cover price, and every single month you're going to find some wonderful specials. Sometimes those specials will be at 45% off cover price, sometimes at 50% off of the cover price, but often the discounts can be more impressive than that.
That's right, and we're recording this at the end of November, so the new December discounts and specials are not up yet, but you can guess that many of the things we talk about on today's previews episode will be discounted at dcbservice.com.
That's right. You can't go wrong by going to their website, dcbservice.com. It's the place for all of your comics pre-ordering needs. And after you do get your comics there, please be sure to send them an email and tell them that the two guys with PhDs sent you.
That's right.
So, Andy, here we are on the other side of Thanksgiving and getting ready to plunge into the next holiday season.
That's right. And got most of the Christmas decorating done around the house over the weekend in order to get ready for the next holiday. How about you?
In the past we haven't, or the past few years, we haven't been decorating the house much, maybe a little outside. And the reason that we don't do anything inside, like with a tree or anything extensive like that, is we have been spending our holidays at my mother-in-law's in northern Indiana.
Uh-huh.
But I think this year we may end up getting a tree nonetheless, because Amanda mentioned something about that the other day.
Well, that's good. We got a tree, and that didn't go well right away. But it's going all right now, and we just we have a high ceiling in our house, and so anything smaller than 10 feet might as well be Charlie Brown's tree with the one little ornament bending it over on the top. So it makes it a challenge.
Yeah. Well, this is going to be kind of a plunge into the holiday, almost like a roller coaster ride, because it's just going to go quickly, I'm sure. And I don't know if we can say the same about this episode going quickly, because, it seems that every month we say, okay, we're going to keep our previews episode down to about an hour and a half. Many times we don't, but we'll see what we can do. But before we get into a discussion of this month's catalog, there's a bit of news that we should share with our listeners. First and foremost, we have two new patrons through Patreon. Derek Burke, over the past week, has decided to support us for $1 a month, and we very much appreciate that, Derek. And by the way, he spells his name the same way as I do mine.
Okay.
So, you can't go wrong with that. And then Nick Prolix has become a new podcast patron at $5 a month. So, Nick, thank you for your support.
Yeah, thanks, Nick.
Yeah, it's always good to get new patrons and also to hear from those who have been patrons with us for almost a year now. And we've heard from people every now and again touching base with us and letting us know that they enjoy the show. But, someone who's not a podcast patron of ours but who did send us email sent a very nice letter just this weekend. And this is Rock Langlois from Quebec, and I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing your name correctly, Rock. It is Langlois. So since he's living in Quebec, I guess it might be Langlois. But email me and correct me if I'm mispronouncing that name. But he writes, "Hey guys, been listening to you since day one. I must say, your show is the best. I listen to a lot of comics podcasts, but I do, emphasize do, listen to all of your podcast episodes. Unfortunately, my financial situation does not give me the opportunity to help you on Patreon for now, but in a near future, I should be able to do it." Oh, so that's good. You make me discover so many hot comics this past year, and thanks for that. I follow all of your recommendations, and I must say, you guys are hitting 100% so far. I've never been disappointed by one of your recommendations. And he also wants to let us know that he is recommending to us Daniel Alarcon's City of Clowns. And I remember when that was solicited a few months back. He says, "I think it's your kind of comic, and I think it's one that you would like to talk about. I really like it. I remember you guys discussing it for the previews episode. This is where I get all of my titles." So, Rock, thank you very much for that high praise in your email.
Yeah, thanks. Now I feel an obligation to recommend something bad, so that we're not hitting 100%. I always feel nervous when I'm at 100% that it's the rug's gonna drop out from under me, and so whatever I can do to sabotage that.
Okay, well, maybe one of our recommendations from this month's catalog will be one of those lousy ones.
Yeah, maybe.
Okay, so let's get into the catalog.
Okay.
We start as we normally do at the front in the Dark Horse section, and I think you had mentioned that you really didn't have, before we started recording, that you didn't have much, if anything, in Dark Horse?
I don't have anything, so go ahead with whatever you've got.
Okay, actually, there's only one thing in Dark Horse that I will definitely be getting, but others strike me as interesting, and I would be tempted if I had time enough and money. On page 44 is issue number 1 of King's Road. This is a 3-issue miniseries written by Peter Hogan with art by Phil Winslade. It looks interesting, and I like Peter Hogan's work, for instance, in Resident Alien, and so it may be worth checking out. I don't think I'll get it, though. Another one that caught my attention.
No, just hang on a second. With the King's Road one, now a lot of that is reprinting from Dark Horse Presents,
Dark Horse
right?
Presents, right. And I hadn't been reading that in Dark Horse Presents. Had you?
Okay. No.
Okay. Another one that seems interesting, just because I've heard people talk about this title several times over the past few years, and this is on page 50 of the catalog, is Brody's Ghost, the Collected Edition. This is by Mark Crilly. Now, have you heard about Brody's Ghost?
No, I hadn't.
Okay. Just different podcasts I've listened to have mentioned this title, and apparently what this Collected Edition does is to bring the various earlier volumes, and I can't remember how many there are, but pulling them all together here. So if you're a Brody's Ghost fan, this may be news for you. And a couple of other things.
Just one that. So that one, that one's a huge book.
Yeah, 600 pages.
Like 600 pages. Okay, and it looks like it's like in a manga trim size.
Yeah, and it also apparently has that manga look to it as well.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. Sorry, keep interrupting your transitions.
Well, that's okay. Another title that maybe is worth mentioning is something that was also in Dark Horse Presents, and that's Neil Adams's Blood. And this is on page 52.
Did you read that?
No, I didn't.
Okay. That book that series is batshit crazy.
It strikes me as when I read the solicit, I thought, okay, this is wacky.
Yeah, and that solicit doesn't even that doesn't reflect what I remember reading in this comic either. But so we've got this book from Neil Adams this month, collecting this serial, which was in like the very earliest issues of the revived Dark Horse Presents, when it was the big thick monthly or quarterly anthology, and then in the DC section there's a 6-issue Superman series by Neil Adams, and it just makes me wonder if did anybody at DC actually read Batman Odyssey? Because I read it and I loved it in a kind of ironic way, in which again it was crazy and didn't make a lot of sense, and that's the way I felt about Blood too.
Now, see, I didn't read Blood, but I did read Odyssey when it was originally serialized, and I remember scratching my head over and over again reading it. I enjoyed the ride. I'm not sure I knew what to take away from it, but you're right. The solicit may not give a lot away, but the cover looks pretty damn freaky. And then on top of that, you have apparently something special with the cover, because they say here on page 52, not just 3D, not just animated, Neil Adams has created the first animated 3D cover in comics with lenticular lenses. Blood spills and fires as the blood spins and fires as his blood symbiont shoots from his body toward the reader. So that seems strange. But I also thought that this may be a unusual title, given the past few times I've talked with Adams at different cons. Yeah. They're interesting conversations, and our listeners, if they can search our website to find those brief conversations. But different, let's say.
Yeah, it's an interesting book.
Yeah. Now, the only title that I'm mentioning in the Dark Horse section this month that I will definitely be getting, this is on page 59. This is from Kengo Hanazawa, I Am Hero Omnibus Edition, Volume 1. Had you heard about this?
No.
Okay, see, I hadn't before maybe a month or two ago, and our friend and manga aficionado Shay Henham, who co-hosts the monthly manga show with me, he mentioned this to me, and he said it's kind of like a manga Walking Dead, and he had heard that Dark Horse was going to be collecting the I Am Heroes series in omnibus editions, and here you go. It's being solicited. This solicit reads, a mentally unhinged manga artist witnesses the beginning of a zombie outbreak in Tokyo, and he's certain of only two things. He's destined to be the city's hero, and he possesses something quite rare in Japan, an actual firearm. So, this seems interesting, and I'm pretty sure it's something that we will discuss on a future manga episode.
Good.
Yeah. So that's all I have in Dark Horse.
Okay.
The next section, DC Vertigo.
Yeah.
Where do you go there?
I just go to the one new book in DC Vertigo, which is on page 123.
Okay, I was going to say before there, one. It's a superhero title, but it's nonetheless one worth mentioning, just because it's by Grant Morrison.
Mm-hmm.
On page 68, there's the, I guess, eagerly anticipated Wonder Woman Earth 1, Volume 1. And, of course, written by Grant Morrison with art by Yannick Paquette.
Mm-hmm.
Who I think didn't Yannick do the Swamp Thing for the New 52?
Yeah, he did the Swamp Thing. He also has worked with Grant Morrison before
on Batman Inc.
On Batman Inc. and on the Bulleteer for the Seven Soldiers of Victory series.
Oh wow, that's been a long time since I've read that.
Yeah.
But so I know this is something that people have been talking about for quite a while or anticipating, and it's always curious to see Grant Morrison's take on, established superheroes. But I just wanted to mention that in passing and then move on to, I guess, what you were going to reference, and that's on page 123.
And so after we've had a flurry of new Vertigo titles, we get yet another one from Sean Aldridge and Scott Godlewski, which is Dark and Bloody #1, which is a 6-issue miniseries.
Mm-hmm.
And it says guns, moonshine, monsters. There's a lot going on in the backwoods of Kentucky. Irish Gentry is a war veteran who returns from Iraq to find his options for supporting his family limited. Since they live in a dry county, Iris has turned to running moonshine for his former ranking officer, meaning the men now share crimes at home and abroad. You see, back in their combat days, Iris's regiment got involved in something they shouldn't have, and now a deadly otherworldly consequence has come looking for vengeance. This sounds like it could easily come out of Cullen Bunn or Jason Aaron.
Mm-hmm.
In that whole backwoods Kentucky milieu, and Sean Aldridge has written Vic Boone, and Scott Godlewski drew Copperhead. So for Image. So we'll see how that series turns out.
Right, and this is also a perfect Vertigo title. It's the kind of thing that they do because it takes one kind of genre, mixes it with another horror. Mystery, and we'll see how it turns out. I'm glad that there is a new #1 that's now being solicited in Vertigo, in addition to what we've seen over the past 3 months with those previous 12 titles.
Yeah, we'll see how it goes. I'll get it and try it out, just like I'm trying out the other series, and we'll be talking about those later on.
Yeah, I think in January we're planning on doing a publisher spotlight on Vertigo.
Yeah.
So another one. So talking about primarily these past 12 titles, but maybe we can get one in of this one as well, depending on when it comes out.
Mm-hmm.
Probably not, but
yeah.
Now that's all I had in Vertigo. Do you have anything else?
No, that's it.
Okay.
And I just go to IDW.
Yeah. Well, uncharacteristically, we went quickly through both Dark Horse and Vertigo.
Yeah.
Yeah. But where do you go in IDW?
I start at page 153, so I'm not sure if you go before that.
So 153.
Yeah, 153 is gives us the relaunch of the series Winona Earp, created by Bo Smith, and this time around drawn by Laura Innes. And the reason for the revival of the Winona Earp series, which has been around for a while, is that this is yet another comic property that's being turned into a television show, which will be coming out in spring on the Sci-Fi Network. So this is basically what Winona Earp is a supernatural crime fighter. She works for the U.S. Marshals Black Badge Division, and she's a descendant of Wyatt Earp. So it's a kind of modern day Western with a supernatural twist, and like I said, it's been around for a while. I often think that Bo Smith is one of the more underrated writers in comics history. He generally tends to do pretty heavily action-oriented comics, but he's good at it. So I'm glad to see Winona Earp coming back, and to seeing Bo get a TV deal out of this.
Yeah. Now, were you familiar with the original series?
Yeah. Now, years ago, I used to actually buy a lot of stuff from Bo Smith through eBay. He had been what was it? He had a position at Eclipse when Eclipse was going on, and in fact, he's still working with Dean Mullaney on the what is it? The American comic strip. Library of American. Yeah. And so he had some older Eclipse stuff. He had written for DC, so he had some of the kind of comps that he had accumulated from DC, and he was selling those on eBay. And so I picked up some from him and ended up with a little in a little correspondence with him for a while.
Oh, cool.
And so he would often send me as a little bonus, like, signed copies of the comics he had been doing. So that's how I first got to see Winona Earp.
And then next year we have the television series.
Yeah, and I think it's a good property for a television series. I mean, the high concept, a modern day Western with a U.S. Marshal who fights supernatural threats is enough of a hook, right? You can figure out what that's going to be about.
Right. Okay, so I'd wondered about that, but I wasn't familiar with the original series, so sounds like something to check out.
Yep.
What else do you have in IDW?
And then 173 is where I go next. So if you have something before then.
Yeah. No, I had noted 173 as well, but before that, this is something that I think is worth checking out if you have money to spare. I don't. This is Archie's Americana box set, 1940s through 1970s. And so this is Bob Montana's Archie, and you have these nice hardbound editions, 4 volumes of them in this series. So if you want to get on an Archie kick, classic Archie, then this may be the way to go if you've got $99.99 to spare. So, and I'm sure you can get it at a decent discount from Discount Comic Book Services. But man, I'm not going to get it. But then after that, I go where you go, and that is 173.
Yeah, and so. Back to our good friend Craig Yo. Again, always worth stopping by his space in the IDW solicits. But in addition now to Haunted Horror and Weird Love, Yo Books is putting out Haunted Love, which is a 3-issue miniseries that I guess combines those, or it features those stories that combine horror and romance. Lurid lust, vicious violence, creepy kisses. So that sounds fun. And so it's curious. It's going to be 3 issues. So we'll see what comes out. What stuff Craig Yo has gathered for that. That collection.
Yeah, and this is coming out just in time for Valentine's Day.
That's true.
But I'm wondering, in this 3-issue series, if these will be completely brand new stories that are horror with a twist of romance in some way? Or, in other words, might they have appeared in earlier issues of Haunted Horror and or Weird Love? I don't know. I wouldn't think so.
Yeah, that'll be interesting. I just remember back in the 70s when DC tried their hand at doing like gothic horror stories that had that gothic romance and horror twist to them. I don't know if you remember. Remember those, like Secret House of Forbidden Love or Haunt?
Oh, yeah.
I don't know. Anyway, they had beautiful covers and they were really interesting books, but this doesn't look like that at all.
Yeah. In fact, these are primarily, partly, not entirely, I guess, pre-code.
Yep.
So that's another reason to love Craig Yo as we do. Mm-hmm. And then if you turn the page, this is the last thing that I have in the IDW section, and this is the next collection of Brian Clevenger's Atomic Robo, the repackaging that IDW is doing.
Yeah.
Now, about a month and a half ago, we had Brian on the show to talk about that. The Everything Explodes collection. So this is the next one. This is Atomic Robo. The Crystals Are Integral collection. So this pulls together the trades Other Strangeness, The Deadly Art of Science, and Ghost Station X, or The Ghost of Station X.
Yeah, that's great. So the next 3 volumes, so 4 through 6,
That's
are
right.
in there, and we had asked Brian if these omnibuses would continue, and here we see it.
Yeah, and this is good to see because I remember when we were talking with him and we asked him about future volumes, he sounded tentative and maybe he just couldn't say anything. But at the
Right.
time I was wondering, maybe it's not assured. They have to wait to see about the sales on that first collection. But for whatever reason, we now definitely see this as a reality.
Yeah.
And then that's all that I have in IDW.
That's right. And so I go then to Image.
And one of the notable things in this month's Image section is the relative dearth of new properties.
Yeah, so maybe we're gonna see some slowing down a little bit, or maybe it's just a kind of 1 month thing. But it would be nice. I like a lot of the new stuff that Image puts out, but if they could kind of slow down a little bit and focus on some of the stuff that's been coming out, that would be neat.
Yeah, especially good for our pocketbooks.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I think that there are only 2 new series, 2 new number ones in this month's solicits.
Yeah, I think so. And the first one that's mentioned that we get on page 178, Mirror #1, written by Emma Rios, who is the artist probably best known for Pretty Deadly, and drawn by Hui Lim. And this is an ongoing series. And the solicit is very, very brief, following a terrorist talking dog, an idealist mage, and a heroic lab rat on their quest for acceptance. But I'm curious to see how this book turns out, and the art. And we get a few sample pages. 3 is really stunning. So I'm gonna check that out.
Yeah, the art does look good. I don't know if I can tell much in terms of the premise or the setup
Right.
in the story samples, other than what we see in the solicit, which, as you pointed out, doesn't tell us much. But I definitely want to check this one out.
Yeah.
I think that one of the two new #1 issues is the one that I'm more interested in, although this next one, Snowfall #1 on page 182, could be interesting as well, even though we're dealing with the well-trod kind of a apocalyptic or post-apocalyptic genre here. Now, this one is written by Joe Harris with art by Martin Morazzo. This is, I guess, the guys who gave us Great Pacific, and you and I discussed issue #1 of Great Pacific, I believe, way back when.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, and then this solicit is in the year 2045. It no longer snows. Well, I mean, living where I do in Texas, I mean, it doesn't anyhow. A catastrophic crash has left the climate ravaged, society splintered, and the newly christened Cooperative States of America propped up and administered by the powerful Hazeltine Corporation. Only one man wages an all-out weather war against the system, wielding the forces of nature themselves as weapons. He is the White Wizard, the Ghost in the Night, genius, terrorist, outlaw, hero? ? So, in that list of descriptors for this protagonist, we don't know how to read him. It seems interesting. I may give it a try. Now, did you go on with Great Pacific beyond those first couple of issues?
No, I didn't.
I wanted to, but I didn't, and it was primarily a matter of time.
Yeah. I just I never got caught up with it, and it's one of the series that started around that time that's endured. So
yeah,
so that's good.
It lasted for quite a while.
Yeah.
What other things do you have in Image?
I jumped way up to 217, so I don't know if you have anything before then.
No, I have something soon after that.
Okay. So on, let's see, I'm trying to scroll through to get to it. So there we go. So on page 217 is an advanced solicit for Garth Ennis and Carlos Esquera's Bloody Mary, which it doesn't say this in the solicit, but this is actually a reprint of an earlier work.
And that was a Vertigo work, right?
Well, no, it wasn't. This is the thing. It wasn't a Vertigo work. It was in that very, very short-lived Helix imprint that DC had started to do science fiction stories. And the only thing that really kind of came out of Helix was Warren Ellis and Derek Robinson's Transmetropolitan. So this has been a while, and as we can tell by the description, which explains that in 1999 we all went back to war. So clearly this was a story that was done before 1999.
Right. Yeah. This is I think originally came out in the mid 90s.
Yeah.
And you're right. I mean, I knew that this. I haven't read it, but I knew that this is previously published material, but you wouldn't know this from the solicit.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Which seems to happen a lot with a lot of the stuff that's being reprinted from that era, especially. Like the stuff that Dover's reprinting, we talk about in most episodes or most previous episodes, doesn't ever really mention the previous publication history of the stuff.
Right. And I guess, as a publisher, you don't want to draw attention to the competition. So that makes sense. On the other hand, it'd be nice to know if this is something that had previously been published, even if, you don't know who that publisher is. And I can't remember the title of it right now, but about a year and a half ago, there was a 5-issue miniseries. Was it 5-issue or more? I can't remember. And I think it was out of Boom. I cannot remember that either. But I remember thinking that it sounded interesting, and then I even mentioned it on our preview show, and then a week later I discovered that it had been a series previously published by a completely different publisher,
Right.
like Image or Dark Horse, something like that.
Yeah. That was that Paul Jenkins and Humberto Ramos book.
Oh yeah, what was the?
I can't remember.
I
the
can't
title.
remember. But I felt a little disappointed because it's like, oh, okay, well, this I didn't know about it earlier, and so I thought this was a new title, a new discovery, and I had even considered getting it. And the first issue, the reason I didn't, I took it off of my order list, is I was pissed that they didn't solicit this as something that was previously published.
Mm-hmm.
But I did not read Bloody Mary when it first came out. Did you?
Yeah, I don't have it anymore though, so that it's been a while. I only kind of have a vague memory of it. Garth Ennis was putting out a lot of stuff for DC.
Yeah.
Both DC, well, DC Vertigo, and then this one series for Helix. And I don't know if Helix lasted more than a year. I always felt that the failure of Helix was, especially the failure to duplicate the success of Vertigo, was that Vertigo had pre-existing properties that made the transition to it, so they carried readers over with those properties. Helix just tried to launch fresh a whole new line of titles without giving a sense of how they fit into DC's publishing regime. And so, again, other than Transmetropolitan, which makes sense that rose to the top because that was such a great series, but a lot of other stuff just kind of fizzled.
Yeah. It reminds me of what we saw with Minx.
Yeah.
For a while. I thought that was an interesting series, but I don't know if it ever defined itself enough to stick. Well, obviously, it didn't define itself well enough to stick around because it's gone.
Right.
And you could even say something similar to some degree with Zuda. Their one attempt at getting into webcomics.
Yeah, it does seem like DC has not given some of these new imprints that they've created much of an opportunity to develop. Even Piranha Press, which didn't last that long, did have an extensive life before it just kind of fizzled out. Okay, but that's it. That's all I got.
In Image?
Yeah.
The one last thing I have in Image is on page 219, and this is the first volume of Josh Fialkov and Ruslan Ekadal's Echoes. Now, this is another title that has been previously published through Image. And in fact, it wasn't that long ago that a new edition of Echoes was published through Image. But now we get this, I guess, the same Echoes. And what's curious about this is they now call this Echoes Volume 1. So I'm wondering if this is in anticipation of the next volume or the continuation of Echoes.
Yep.
So it would be interesting to see. But that's all that I have in Image.
And just one quick mention on the next page, 220, since we're about in that space. There's a second volume of Octopus Pie, which I mentioned last month. So that's Image is very quickly rolling out those Octopus Pie collections. So then I go to Aftershock next.
Okay. Yeah, we're in the back half of the catalog, past the premier publishers. Before we get to Aftershock, because, I noted some things there as well. On page 238, and this is also a follow-up to something that we mentioned last month. This is in the Action Lab section. The House of Montresor #1. Now, remember last month, Action Lab solicited a new adaptation of The Cask of Amontillado, and they had mentioned something in that solicit about a new series based on the House of Montresor. And so now we get this. So this is The House of Montresor #1. Murder is only perfect when everyone knows you got away with it. Edna Fortunato is the sole surviving heir of two great families whose fates have commingled. On the eve of her inheritance, Edna is summoned to the grand estate to meet the enigmatic Count Montresor. She embarks on the journey, unprepared for the secrets still to be revealed, and unaware that a killer has set the stage for one final act of vengeance upon the Fortunato family. Revenge does not end in the House of Montresor, a sequel to Edgar Allan Poe's classic revenge tale, The Cask of Amontillado. So, I wonder, I mean, I'm going to get it just because I want to see what they do with this classic Poe story, but I don't know. I don't know. The jury's out. This could be fascinating or not.
Yeah.
I have hopes.
So I noticed last time too, you pronounce it Amontillado. I've always pronounced it Amontillado.
Okay, well.
And that's my guess because it's Spanish. But I don't know.
And I can't remember where I got the pronunciation. Maybe.
Did you get it from Lou Reed? Because when Lou Reed reads it, he says Amontillado.
No, I didn't get it from him. It could have been either out of my own head or from one of my professors.
I don't know if there's a right or wrong way.
Yeah.
I think it's probably I've seen it and heard it both ways. But I think that so anyway, I've always been curious about that. So I don't know if listeners have a suggestion.
Yeah, if they have a preferred method of pronunciation.
Yeah.
Okay, so Aftershock.
Yeah, so a little earlier in the now I don't remember where this is. We get an ad for Aftershock in this, I think. Maybe not. Maybe I'm missing it. But anyway, Aftershock is continuing to roll out new series. This time, though, they only have one, which is Second Sight by written by David Hine and drawn by Alberto Ponticelli. So this again looks interesting. I'm really curious to see what these Aftershock books are like, because as far as I know, none of them have come out yet, have they?
I don't think so. I haven't seen one.
Yeah. So.
But I think
we should shortly be getting at least some of the first four.
Yeah, I think in December, because Aftershock began to roll titles out 2 months ago, and I think they started with 4.
Yeah.
And then last month there were a couple of others. I think last month they solicited American Monster and then Strayer.
Right.
So this would be, I guess, the 7th title that they're coming out with within 3 months.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I want to see what these are like. I have high expectations just because of all of the creators involved.
Mm-hmm. Yes, exactly.
And as we commented a couple of months ago, this seems like, these titles, the way that they read and who's working on them, could be something out of Vertigo.
Yeah, these could easily be Vertigo, Image, and Boom even titles.
Mm-hmm. So if these things seem as tasty as they appear to be, then maybe into next year we can do a publisher spotlight on Aftershock before they start coming out with so many titles that we really couldn't viably do this.
Right.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm with you. I'm definitely getting ready to check that out. Where do you go next?
I just go a few pages later to 246 to the alternative comic section.
Yeah, same here.
And there's just a load of stuff in alternative comics to talk about. A new. Well, actually, several of these things are resolicited
Or at
from
least,
earlier.
well, I know that Dylan Horrocks' Incomplete Works is resolicited.
Yeah, and so is Malachi Ward's from now on, and then the Sequential Artists Workshop, a guide to creating professional comic strips. All those are all three of those are resolicited, and then there's two new ones: Johnny Negrin's Selected Works from 2012 and 2013, and Street Dogs by Liz Lunny.
Dogs.
Dogs, yeah, DAWGZ.
That's right. You know, I have talked with or corresponded via email with Mark Arsenal, who is behind Alternative Comics, and he has told me over the past 2 or 3 months they've had some warehouse issues. So I wonder if this has anything to do with some of these resolicits.
Oh, that could be.
Yeah, but so I'm interested in these. The From Now On and Street Dogs especially, but in particular, Horrocks' Incomplete Works.
Yeah.
Because I had ordered that however many months back when it was solicited, and then got notification from DCB Service that it was canceled. So now it's resolicited.
Yep.
But, you know, something else on this page looks interesting, and it's not Alternative Comics. It's from Alterna Comics,
Yeah.
which comes right before Alternative Comics. And this is All My Ghosts by Jeremy Mazie. Struggling to survive in a small-town economy, Joe Hale is forced to sell his family's newspaper business. After the buyout, strange events begin to occur as Joe's past comes back to haunt him. Literally. It seems interesting. The little bit of art here looks like something that could easily, come out of Alternative Comics, really. And I'm not familiar with this, but I was looking this up, and apparently this was a serial that I don't know where all it was available, but I did see on Amazon that the various issues are available via Kindle.
Okay. Yeah, it's that struck me as interesting, and the book's trim size is 7x7, so it's going to be a kind of very square, small book, and I have a feeling that I've seen other stuff from Alterna Comics that has been in that size.
I go next to page 270, I think it is?
Yeah, I got a couple things on 270.
Yeah, one thing I was going to mention is we get another title from Bergen Street Press. Now, this is the publisher that's been giving us Copra.
Right.
And now they have this new title, Revenger, Volume 1.
Mm-hmm.
And
have you seen Revenger? Okay, I was about to ask you the same thing. I have come across Revenger. I've never read it, actually, but it's been a book that when I've been at conventions, people have said you should go pick this up, and I just never have, for I guess a variety of stupid reasons. But so I'm curious to. It's been recommended to me before, so I'm curious to check this out.
Okay.
By Charles Forsman.
Yeah. And then the other thing on 270 you wanted to point out?
Oh, yeah, the Big Planet Retrofit Future Shock Zero graphic novel.
Right.
136-page anthology focusing loosely around the watchwords of sci-fi Astro Plus. It doesn't list who any of the creators are in it, but it does say it's packed to the gills with talent.
Yeah.
And as a Big Planet Retrofit book, I would guess that it probably has a lot of great great talent in it that we've seen from other Big Planet books.
Exactly. And in fact, Big Planet retrofit titles were, at least for me, one of the best discoveries of 2015.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I knew about them before, but I really didn't think about them as a publisher doing the kind of innovative work that they're doing until we did that publisher spotlight on them earlier this year, and that definitely won me over.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Where do you go next?
I skipped to Dynamite on 299, so I didn't have anything in Boom unless you do.
A couple of things in Boom. One is on page 276, Kennel Block Blues. This is one of the first issue of a 4-issue miniseries written by Ryan Ferrier with art by Daniel Bayliss. It looks interesting. Now, I never read Curb Stomp, and Ferrier did that. Did you?
No, but I had been curious about it when it came out.
Yeah, I wanted to read it, but just never got around to it. I did read a couple of issues of Dave, or D4.
Oh, yeah.
And I like that. So this seems something that I would be willing to give a try. Plus, it's interesting. It's an anthropomorphic narrative that's also a prison story, but instead of prisoners in high security facility, you have animals in a kennel. Thus, the title Kennel Block Blues.
Yeah.
So.
And the first cover looks interesting, where it goes from the main character here walking jauntily from a prison scene to a more kind of fantastic world.
Cartoony, much more cartoony. Yeah. That's one of the things that got my attention. And then the other thing that I was going to point out, and I can't find it now that I'm looking for it. This is in Boom. We're both working this time around with a PDF, and it becomes difficult to navigate a PDF going from page to page. Okay, yeah, this is on page 281, and this is Hit, 1957 trade paperback. For those who enjoyed the first Hit, as I did, this is collecting this next narrative arc. This is written by Bryce Carlson with art by Vanessa R. Del Rey.
Mm-hmm.
So we're getting this in a trade. Yay.
Yep.
And then the only other thing before... Now, where does Dynamite begin?
290. I go to 299, so I'm not sure where Dynamite begins in relationship to that.
Okay, because before we get to that, I'm going to... I think it's 294.
Mm-hmm.
This is the Conundrum Press section. We have the next volume of the Drippy the Newsboy series. This is Adventures of Drippy, the Red Drip of Courage. When Wolverton and I several months back did a publisher spotlight on Conundrum, one of the books that we discussed was the first volume in this Drippy the Newsboy series, and that is Drippy's Mama, which is based loosely on Stephen Crane's George's mother. And then now this one, The Red Drip of Courage, is based obviously on The Red Badge of Courage. And I really liked Drippy's Mama, so I'd like to give this one a try as well.
Good.
And then the other title here seems really interesting. This is Ramshackle, a Yellowknife Story by Alison McCreech. And this, I guess, is a travelogue memoir-type story about her travels up to Yellowknife, which is way up in northern Canada. So as they put it in the solicit, it's about her first summer north of 60.
Yep.
So, for me, almost anything that Conundrum Press does is worth checking out.
Yeah.
But both of these titles seem particularly interesting. Mm-hmm. Okay, so you go to
$2.99.
Okay.
And this is just to mention that Dynamite is continuing their Shaft series written by David F. Walker. This one drawn by Dietrich Smith, and this is Shaft: Imitation of Life. And I really liked the first Shaft miniseries that Walker wrote, and Walker has since kind of taken off. And in fact, in this month, they're also soliciting the new, in the Marvel section, the new Luke Cage and Iron Fist, new Power Man and Iron Fist series that Walker is writing with Sanford Green drawing, which I'm really looking forward to. And so, so the first thing of Walker's that I had read was that previous Shaft miniseries, and I thought it was a great noir mystery series that took its subject matter seriously. It didn't go kind of as for an over-the-top blaxploitation storyline, but did instead a very kind of straightforward mystery story. Mm-hmm. And so I'm curious to see how that continues. And also in February is David Walker's original Shaft novella, Shaft's Revenge. So I'm glad to. I can't imagine there's a huge audience out there for this stuff. So I'm really glad to see Dynamite still putting it out, because that first series was really good.
I remember when that first series came out, but I just didn't read it, and it's not because I didn't want to. It's just a matter of time. I never got around to it.
Yeah. Well, it's been collected, I think, since then. So, I would recommend it.
Okay. A thumbs up from Andy.
Yep.
Okay, I don't have anything until page 321.
Okay, so
and that's
I do.
Dover and Drawn in Quarterlies.
Yeah, I go to 316 first.
Okay.
Because we've got a few ads beforehand for this, but Devil's Due First Comics is now we get another. They did a reprint of Warp recently, but now also the Badger is showing up here. So this is another property that had originally been published by First Comics, Mike Barron's The Badger, this time with art by Jim Fern and Paul Mounts. And Badger came out at about the same time as Nexus, and Nexus is one of my all-time favorite comic series. I wasn't as big a fan of The Badger, but I did really like it and read it all the way through, and so I'm glad to see that character coming back. And it says crazier than Randy Quaid, which is probably true. That the Badger was a superhero who had these martial arts skills, but he also had kind of multiple personality disorder, and a lot of that stemmed from his traumatic experiences in Vietnam. So they I always thought that Barron did an interesting job of balancing the kind of humor and pathos that was needed for a character like that. So I'm curious to see how that holds up in a new version.
You say crazier than Randy Quaid?
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess he got his traumatic experience in Independence Day.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, he is a survive. Well, he didn't survive, right? Spoiler alert. Right? flies his jet right into the bad guys.
Yeah, I don't even remember. I've seen that all the way through once, and for me, it was forgettable.
Yeah.
Didn't enjoy it.
That's too bad.
Well, you liked it?
Sure, you need, but also you need to enjoy more things.
Yeah. Well, there are other things that I can enjoy, so why spend time watching Independence Day?
There you go.
Yeah. Okay, on page 321, we have the aforementioned Dover Publications, and this is another new edition of a previously published title. Jeff Nicholson's Through the Habit Trails, Life Before and After My Career in the Cubicles.
Yeah.
And I'm not familiar with the Through the Habit Trails, are you?
No. So I'm not. I don't. It does say that it was a 1993 Eisner Award nominee.
Yeah. So yeah, that's the closest it comes to mentioning in a Dover solicit that this has previously been published elsewhere.
Yeah.
But you know, they have to mention the Eisner nomination because that's a big selling point. But you know, given our previous conversations over Dover solicits, I went to look this one up and saw that it had come out previously. Much more interesting for me is in the Drawn and Quarterly section, we get yet another Michael DeForge book.
Yeah.
This is Big Kids.
Mm-hmm.
God, when does that guy sleep?
Exactly.
Between Drawn and Quarterly and Koyama, he's got something about every month or every other month, it seems.
Yeah, and what was that? The book that we got recently, Frontier? That was Michael DeForge too, right?
Oh yes, that issue of Frontier from Youth in Crisis. Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So it's like something every month.
Yeah, exactly. And he's also, I thought this is what you were referring to at first. He's also in the new issue of Tattle Creek.
That's right.
Which is an anthology you and I got our hands on, and I think we're gonna be talking about this in a future podcast episode. So
maybe
this is a great anthology. But yeah, this new Michael DeForge it says teenaged misfits and adolescent rabble-rousing takes center stage in this dark coming-of-age tale, which actually does sound like a Michael DeForge story. Big Kids follows a troubled teenage boy through the transformative years of high school as he redefines his friends, his interests, and his life path. When the boy's uncle, a police officer, gets kicked out of the family's basement apartment and transferred to the countryside, April moves in. She's a college student, mysterious and cool. She quickly takes a shine to the boy. Eerie and perfectly paced, Michael DeForge's Big Kids muses on the complicated and often contradictory feelings people struggle with in adolescence, the choices we make to fit in, and the ways we survive times of change.
Yep.
And if you want even more Michael DeForge, they're resoliciting books that he's come out with over the past, couple of years. Ant Colony and First Year Healthy.
Yeah. So, good stuff from Drawn and Quarterly.
Yeah. Now, something else on this page in the Drawn and Quarterly section is Brian Chippendale's Puke Force. And correct me if I'm wrong, wasn't this solicited last month?
Yeah, it says that this is resolicited from September, actually.
Oh, from September.
So 2 months ago.
Okay. And, it's nothing unusual for Drawn and Quarterly to put in another solicit of something from the past, even recently. But I think I saw elsewhere in this catalog kind of a boxed staff pick of Puke Force, and they usually do that with new books. Mm-hmm. So that's what threw me.
Well, it's still a new book. It's just resolicited.
Yeah.
So it hadn't come out when it was originally scheduled to come out, so it's delayed.
Okay. So I'm not going crazy. It was previously solicited. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So good things from Drawn and Quarterly, and I next go to Fantagraphics, which is usually the case going from Drawn and Quarterly.
Yeah. So that's 326.
And a lot of good stuff, as we almost always have in Drawn and Quarterly.
Yeah, but
Fantagraphics.
And Fantagraphics, yeah. But what I find interesting is how much of the there's the one page of Fantagraphics, 6 items. 3 of them are single issue comics. The usual Hip Hop Family Tree, which has been coming out regularly, but also Sammy Harkham's Crickets #5 and Kevin Huizenga's Ganges #5.
Right.
So three different single issue comics.
And that's good. And I think that, I would guess that Harkham's Cricket's number 5. It hadn't been that long since the last Crickets, if I'm not mistaken. But this is also solicited along with his Kramer's Ergo 9 that you and I had discussed in the previous episode that Fantagraphics is going to be publishing now, that he is editing this. So I'm sure there's some timing going on there. But I do think that it's interesting that we get the next issue of Huizinga's Ganges the same time we get the solicit of the next issue of Cricket, because Crickets and Ganges have been around for a while. It's just it takes a long time for each issue to come about. And along with that, I think it's interesting that you have another title that's been around Fantagraphics for quite a while, and that is Dame Darcy's The Meat Cake Bible.
Yes.
Now, it's been a long time since we've seen any version of Meat Cake, but now we get, I guess, a collection in the definitive collection of Meat Cake, which was a strange series.
Yeah, that's a massive book too. 476 pages, $50. Yeah, that's a hefty tome.
You know, they've been doing that over the past year or so at Fantagraphics. Their older titles, publishing all of them in these larger editions. You know, last year, I guess maybe earlier this year, they did that with Johnny Ryan's Angry Youth Comics. And I know they're getting ready to do this with which one of Peter Baggs? He was telling me in that interview, and it's not Hate. Oh, Neat Stuff. Yeah, I think they're going to come out with the definitive edition of Neat Stuff.
Okay.
But they're doing this with their older titles, and of course they're doing it expensively with other titles as well that didn't originate with them, such as Zap. But in women comics, but I think that's great. Fantagraphics seems to be doing more of these collections.
Yeah, and in addition to Meat Cake Bible, a couple other things that are in this Fantagraphics section is that Fantagraphics has picked up CF's series of graphic novels, Power Masters, from Picture Box. I'm not sure if this is their first volume of that.
Fantagraphics, yeah, I'm pretty sure.
But this is the fourth and final volume of the series. I've never read Power Masters, but a ton of people have told me that I need to read it. So now that it's finished, that might be something I get into.
Yeah, I've heard good things about it as well, but you know, with this fourth book, I don't have the other three, so
right.
I'm going to be tempted to get books 1, 2, and 3, which are also solicited on that following page, 327.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, and you mentioned Kramer's Ergo number 9, and just to mention who's in that, once again, Michael DeFord shows up. in something, along with Kim Deitch, Ben Jones, Andy Burkhalter. There's a ton of people. Kevin Huizinga again. So there's a ton of people in that book. You know, that has been a pretty much kind of generation-defining anthology so far anyway, so it'll be worth getting.
Right. And also, this volume is going to be more affordable than the last one.
Yeah, that's true, too.
Yeah. I never got number 8.
Oh, no.
Although we can probably find it for a halfway decent price used on Amazon, I guess.
That could be.
And by the way, listeners, if you do get your books on Amazon, used or otherwise, go to our website and click on our Amazon.com banner, and we'll get a few cents kickback if you do that.
There you go.
Okay, so how is that for a quick plug?
Good job.
On page 328, another favorite of ours, First Second.
Yep.
And they are, in 2016, celebrating their 10-year anniversary. So that's a big deal. And in fact, I don't know when or if we'll do this, but I know we just recently Gwen and I did a publisher spotlight on First Second, but for their 10th year anniversary, Gina was pressing us to do another spotlight that we could talk about whatever seasonal titles they have at the time and emphasize their 10-year anniversary.
Cool.
But on the page 328 solicits, the one that stands out for me is the fourth book in the Last Man series. This is The Show.
Now, I listened to your spotlight on this on First Second, and if I remember right, where you're saying you're not, it's not clear how many volumes of the show of The Last Man there are, or do you know how many there are?
If I remember our conversation, the one that Gwen and I had, I think I wasn't sure how many there were, and I thought she may have heard that there was a certain number.
Okay. Because these are translations, right?
Yes.
From French. Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, they're originally European comics, but they definitely have a manga feel to them.
Mm-hmm.
Especially with the fighting, which rests as the premise of this series. And it's really good. I know I've said this before on previous episodes, most recently on the Publisher Spotlight on First Second, but this is a great series to pick up.
Yep.
And then it seems like the other books that they're soliciting this month are primarily for younger readers.
Yeah, there's Sarah Varon's Sweater Weather and Other Short Stories. From the creator of Robot Dreams, which is also in a new edition later in the book, or later in the catalog. But this sounds like an interesting volume because it combines short comic stories, but also essays and journal entries that I guess get into Sarah Varon's process of creating comics.
And then they have a generous helping of resolicits. In fact, usually First Second doesn't have any more than 1 or 2 pages in the previews catalog. This time around, they take up 3.
Yep.
So where do you go after First Second?
I don't go anywhere till 352. So if you have anything between then,
I don't.
So 352 is, I guess, a somewhat rare appearance of Last Gasp in previews.
Oh no, I do have something before. I'm sorry. Yeah. I'm okay. No, go ahead, and we'll just back up.
Okay. So Last Gasp has solicited a new anthology, As You Were, Volume 4, Living Situations, which is a collection of original short stories from many great independent comics creators. And the theme is living situations, the 33 contributions spanning a globe with a variety of gender identities and ethnicity. Beautiful and captivating, this volume has it all with tales of adventure, love, loss, chaos, friendship, cats, science fiction, and psychedelic fantasy. And it looks like it's got an all-star cast of creators: Liz Suburbia, Liz Prince, Emily Tim, Ben Passmore, Ben Snakepit, Rachel Dukes, and more. So Last Gasp is, of course, one of the great underground comics publishers from back in the day. So
right.
This should be interesting.
Yeah, and they're still doing things once in a blue moon, so that's good. And, when you mentioned Last Gasp, I realized that my notes are all messed up because I've got the page numbers, both the physical page number of the previews volume and then the PDF page number. So when you ask me...
Oh, yeah.
So I got all mixed up. But yeah, this is one, when you mentioned it, it's like, oh, wait a minute. This is something I wanted to highlight as well. Another great anthology. It seems, I don't know if we're noticing anthologies more than we had been earlier, or there actually are more anthologies, both shorter issues as well as longer book form anthologies.
Yeah, and for all the comments we hear often about how anthologies there's just no market for anthologies, they don't do very well. It still seems to be a format of choice for a lot of, especially independent publishers.
Yeah, and I think smaller independent publishers especially, because it's not often that you'll get Drawn in Quarterly or Fantagraphics to do that. I think Fantagraphics more so than Drawn in Quarterly.
Yep.
But, so yeah, this is something I want to check out, especially because it has the work of Liz Suburbia, and I just recently read her book, Sacred Heart, and really enjoyed that.
That's interesting because I just read the other Liz Prince's Tomboy, which came out last year, which I really liked.
Yeah, I remember you mentioning that.
Yeah.
Okay, now, I did have, if I can find them, a couple of things before that. On page 344 in the humanoids section, this is Stefan Levallois' The Ark, and I'm probably mispronouncing that name. So, yeah, it's a nearly silent allegorical fable of man versus nature that explores the medium's potential in a stunning cinematic fashion. This looks interesting. I've getting more and more into the kind of things that Humanoids is doing. I think good quality stories and especially art. So this is something that I might get.
Okay.
And then on the following page, 345, is something from Improper Books. And I want to mention this. I think it was maybe 2.5 years ago that we had mentioned in a previous episode the solicitation for Benjamin Reed and Chris Wildgoose's Porcelain. And I never read it, but I mention this because I've been in contact with Benjamin Reed. Seems to be a very nice guy. And I know that there was a re-release or a new edition of Porcelain. Now we get this next graphic novel called Porcelain Bone China that's solicited on page 345. But there's also another title here that looks interesting. It is Mulp, Spectre of the Sun, #1. This is by Matt Gibbs and Sarah Durkinton. Mulp is an anthropomorphic comic book, a pulp adventure set in a world of mice. Scepter of the Sun follows the exploits of Jack Redpath and Vicky Jones as they attempt to unravel a mystery surrounding an ancient stone tablet unearthed during archaeological excavation in Egypt. So, we get another anthropomorphic tale. We've mentioned a couple of those today. I next go to page 356. I don't know if you have anything before that.
No.
Okay, this is something, we received an email about this, and I hadn't about a week or two ago, and I hadn't heard of this before. This is from Magnetic Press, Gollum, Volume 1, by Lorenzo Sicoti, it looks like. It says set. Now, see, it's the Gollum that immediately got my attention.
Right.
But it's not the traditional mythological Gollum. It says set in the future, post-Eurozone Italy, entrenched in a bizarre form of hypercapitalism. Gollum follows a young boy kidnapped during a political protest gone sour who learns that he has the power to not only change the city, but reality itself. This intensely imaginative political sci-fi graphic novel is a visual tour de force created by contemporary design icon Lorenzo Sicoti. And I'm not familiar with his work, but he's better known as LRNZ. Could be worth checking out.
Yep. Yeah, and then I go next to 358 to the No Brow Press.
Yes.
Entry, which is Mean Girls Club one shot by Ryan Heshka. It introduces Pinky, Sweets, Blackie, McQuaalude, Wendy, and Wanda. So that's enough. Yeah. They're the Mean Girls Club, a menacing powerhouse of ruthless rebels. So anyway, that sounds great, and it's a one shot, $5.95. for 24 pages. So I'd be curious to see how that is.
And it looks good. I mean, we only see the cover, but the art just immediately drew my attention.
Yep.
On that next page, we get the Oni section. This is Wet Moon Book 1, Feeble Wanderings, and this is another reprint from Sophie Campbell. And I knew of this, but I've not read it. Have you?
No, but I had that marked too. I'm glad to see this getting collected and put out in a new edition. And so, it looks like Oni's committed then to releasing the whole series. That'll be great. And so that comes out in late April. So this is a big advance solicit.
Mm-hmm. I go next to page 367.
Yep. And that's my last thing. So
the Pantheon book?
Yeah. Go ahead, because you have an investment in this. So I'll let you handle that.
No, this is Sunny Lu's The Art of Charlie Chan Hak Che. This is it says signed bookplate edition. And I'm wondering if we're going to get something kind of like we did with First, Second, and Sculptor, Scott McCloud Sculptor. The first time it was solicited, I think it was something like that, a bookplate edition. And then that next month, it was just the regular edition. But this is an interesting book. I've mentioned on the show before that I read this when Sunny Lu was in the process of putting the finishing touches on the book. And actually, Sunny had gotten in touch because of our interview with Gene Yang around the time of Green Turtle. And he said, hey, thanks very much for giving that book some attention. And he mentioned something about a book that he's working on. He said, would you mind reading this and giving me your opinion? And so I read it and told him what I thought. And I don't want to give anything away because I think that that's part of the genius of this book. It's not what you expect. And of everything solicited in this month's previews, this is the one that I'm most excited about. We should definitely discuss this on a future episode when this comes out next year, or maybe even have Sunny on the show.
That would be great because I've also been enjoying what Sunny's doing on Dr. Fate.
Dr. Fate,
DC, yeah. That's one of the new series I've been keeping up with.
Yeah. And is that going to continue?
I don't know. I haven't read any cancellation news on it the way I have about other series. So
So, he's doing some interesting things. Now, this book, The Art of Charlie Chan Hak Che, it says, meet Charlie Chan Hak Che, the greatest comic book artist you've probably never heard of. When he started making comics in Singapore as a boy of 16 in 1954, Chan expected fame and fortune to quickly follow. But as Singapore's road to independence would be full of twists and turns, so too would Chan's own journey as an artist. Splicing together a dizzying array of art styles, genres, and forms, Sunny Lu's multi-layered graphic novel is a celebration of life, comics and storytelling. The Art of Charlie Chan Hak Che is an innovative work that challenges the possibilities of the comics medium, creating a double-edged history. Now, that last sentence that I just read in the solicit, it's not pulled directly from my endorsement of the book. The wording is somewhat similar. But our endorsement in the Singapore edition, which came out earlier this year, is credited to the Comics Alternative.
Well, there you go.
So we both got credit for that.
Yeah, as with so many things, you do the work and I get the credit.
This really is a great book, and I'm looking forward to discussing it.
Yeah, and just to mention on the other page, there's Super Genius is continuing to put out the reprints of the old Techno Comics books, which were kind of the odd series that were created by Neil Gaiman, among others, and but other creators basically took them from the beginning and ran with them. But I had a kind of soft spot for those books.
And so, what, Mr. Hero?
Yeah, Mr. Hero, the Pneumatic Man, and Lady Justice and Technophage. Yeah. So anyway, but we could spend some time talking about the demise of Techno Comics, but not now.
Well, also beginning on that page and going into the next 368, we would be remiss if we didn't highlight PS Art Books, because one of our listeners, Rainer Koschnick, is a big fan of these. And as we mentioned last month, we tend to give them short shrift. But they're great volumes to get. As I said last month, my fear is that you get one, and before you know it, you're going to want to get others. Where else do you? You're finished.
I'm done. Yeah. So whatever you've got left, go ahead.
Okay. On page 394, which is page 405 in the PDF, which our listeners means nothing to them. This is by a publisher, 21 Pulp, and it seems interesting. I hadn't heard of this before, but apparently this collects a series. Hero Hourly. This is by James Patrick and art by Carlos Trigo. A critically acclaimed smash hit is collected! ! Welcome to the Hero Hourly. If Saul thought working as a superhero would be any different than asking, would you like fries with that, he was mistaken. How he has to deal with bad pay, lousy bosses, and work politics. Or now he has to deal with bad wages, lousy bosses, and work politics. We all start somewhere. So this seems an interesting take on superheroes having to clock in and work hourly, which reminded me of, from about a year and a half ago, Cowl. Because you also had heroes that were taken into a labor-oriented direction. And then after that, I go to page 408, which gets us into Viz Media, and just mention in passing a couple titles there that are always worth mentioning. I think the next issue of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure is being solicited, as well as Assassination Classroom, both titles we've discussed on the Manga Show. And then on page 414, from Vanguard Productions. You know, Vanguard over the past few years has been putting out these nice editions, usually themed-based or genre-based, from Wally Wood. And they got a new one out, Wally Wood Jungle Adventures with King Jim and Animan.
Yep, Jim King.
What did I say?
King Jim, which makes sense because Jungle Jim was made by King.
Okay, I didn't even realize I said that.
Features, but I'm wondering it too if the Jim King is meant to be a kind of reference to that anyway.
Yeah, I don't know.
But yeah, I'm glad they put out these Wallywood collections.
So, and that's all I have in the comics section. The only other thing is in the book section on page 327, and that is Pioneering Cartoonists of Color. And this is going to be coming out through University Press of Mississippi, written by Tim Jackson. And, I'm not familiar. Jackson is an illustrator and cartoonist, and I'm not familiar with his work. But I've looked him up, and, he's in a number of newspapers, smaller newspapers around the country. And are you familiar with him?
No.
Yeah. So I'd be curious to see his take on African American history and comics, or the African American history in comics. Because because from the title, Pioneering Cartoonists of Color, I thought at first that it was going to look at comic artists of different ethnicities, of color. But apparently it's only African American. But coming out from University Press of Mississippi, it's Always good to check that out.
Yep.
And that's all I have in the December previews catalog.
Yeah. There we go.
Yeah. So, a lot of good stuff, and we appreciate you guys for sticking with us and following along. And if you do what Rock does, and we found out that he does this because he sent us an email about this, and you get your recommendations from us, our previews episodes, then you can order these all at a great discount, some higher than others, through our sponsor, and that is Discount Comic Book Service. Their website is dcbservice.com. They don't have the December specials up yet, but pretty darn soon they will, and you know they're going to be deep and plentiful. And if you get your books through Amazon, in fact, if you get anything through Amazon.com, make sure that you go to our website, the webpage comicsalternative.com/Amazon, and you will find a link to click through and thus make your Amazon.com purchases. We get a small kickback whenever you do so, and that's a good thing.
Yes, we like getting kicked back.
Mm-hmm. And after you do get your comics at either Discount Comic Book Service or through Amazon.com, get in touch with us and let us know what you're going to be reading. If you go to the website, comicsalternative.com, you'll find that you can send us a voicemail through the wonders of SpeakPipe. Or you can call us the old-fashioned way. Our phone number is 4153-COMICS. That's 415-326-6427.
That's right, or you can get a hold of us by email. We are two guys at comicsalternative.com, or you can get a hold of us individually. I'm Andy at comicsalternative.com.
And I'm Derek at comicsalternative.com.
And we also have our Twitter feed where we announce new content to the podcast as well as updates to the blog. You can check out our Twitter feed at the number 2 guys with PhDs.
That's right. You can also find us on Facebook, on Tumblr, on Instagram, on Google+, on Pinterest, and on YouTube. You can subscribe to the podcast through iTunes, you can stream us on Stitcher, you can also find us on TuneIn, and you can find every single one of our episodes as well as the reviews and the comics-related commentary that we post on our blog. And that's at our website, comicsalternative.com.
That's right, all the ways to get a hold of us and let us know how we're doing.
Yeah, and we do enjoy hearing from you. So drop us a message, and until next time, I'm Derek.
And I'm Andy. See ya.